In the early hours of this morning, something unprecedented happened. A presidential candidate who seemed undefeatable, who had decades of experience, who was already Secretary of State, was beaten. Not only that, but she was beaten by a man whom everyone agreed was unelectable, a man whose obnoxious personality and obscene remarks had turned even his own party against him, a man with no political experience, a failed businessman, a man who is almost certainly a rapist and whose most vocal supporters have been literal neo-Nazis. As America reels from the election result, political pundits are already scrambling to explain what happened. No doubt liberals up and down the country will lay the blame on the usual suspects: racism, hate, ignorance, abstract concepts that even those talking about them so loudly will find hard to define. The usual convenient half-truths. The papers and blogs in the coming weeks will be filled with think pieces full of sound, fury and righteous indignation, easily digestible by their target audiences, challenging no one, achieving nothing. Why did Trump win? I'll tell you. I'll tell you what they won't tell you. He won because he was the candidate of hope. When Hillary Clinton won the Democratic nomination, it sent a message to vast swathes of the American population, and that message was, we don't need your approval. We don't need your praise, your hope, or your admiration. All we need are your votes. The Democratic Party thought they could take their voters for granted. They thought they could field a uniquely unlikable candidate, their worst in many years, a candidate who was hated by a significant proportion of Democratic voters, a candidate implicated in multiple crimes, married to a war criminal and probable serial rapist. They thought that they could put forward someone that awful and get away with it because their voters would vote for anyone to keep the Republicans out, especially when the man running for the Republicans was as hateful as Donald Trump. Looking back, Clinton's campaign was largely built around the fact that she wasn't Trump. Obviously she had other policies, but that was what she fell back on. Whenever one of her awful attempts at winning votes fell flat, whenever it became apparent that she had nothing to interest the average voter, she or her supporters would remind us that, hey, at least she wasn't that guy. Well, I'm sorry, Madam soon-to-be former secretary, but you can't win an election like that. Not anymore. Now compare that with Trump's campaign. Yes, of course he relied on racism to a large extent. Yes, of course a lot of people voted for him out of racism, but look beyond that. Look beyond that and you'll see something else. Donald Trump made promises. He promised jobs. He promised to give people back their pride in their country. He gave the appearance of listening to and taking seriously their complaints. You have to remember that Donald Trump's support base are exactly the kind of people that the Democrats have completely abandoned over the last decade or two. The white working class. The bloke who's been struggling to pay rent ever since his job got shipped overseas. The family living in a trailer park who've been on welfare for 10 years. The single mother working 12-hour days at fucking Walmart and still not making enough to live comfortably. They're the people Trump was reaching out to. He was offering hope. Hope that they might find work again, or find jobs that paid enough to support them. Hope, in other words, that he could make America great again. And what was Clinton's response? America is already great. Imagine how that must have felt for someone who's struggling to make ends meet, to put food on the table and a roof over their families' heads. Imagine what it must be like to have watched your town slowly decay into poverty and destitution after the factories shut down. Then to have someone come along and promise to bring back everything you've lost, and then for their opponent to say, nah, we're good, everything's fine. Is there anything more indicative of just how out of touch and privileged Hillary and some of her most vocal supporters are than the phrase, America is already great? Of course Donald Trump's lying. Of course he doesn't have the best interests of working class Americans at heart, but that doesn't matter, because neither does Hillary. And if it's down to someone who doesn't give a shit about you and is open about that, or someone who doesn't give a shit but at least pretends to, most people will choose the latter, because at least there's a chance he might do some of the good shit he's promised. Just look at the slogans they were using. Make America great again, that's a good one. It's positive, it's proactive, it plays into the nationalism with which Americans are indoctrinated practically from birth. Or how about Obama's slogan from back in 2008? Yes, we can. That's nice. 3 words, 1 syllable each, nice and punchy. Yes, we can. What was Clinton's slogan? I'm with her. So we've gone from a positive commitment to possibility, yes we can, to a vague statement of allegiance. What was the second choice? I plan to vote Democrat. It's about equal in terms of punch and symbolic weight. And America is already great. Seriously, when has a successful political campaign ever been fought on the basis of, yeah, things are all right, really? I mean, Hillary, you might not have noticed, but your country's kind of going through a bit of turmoil lately. Remember those black people you and your husband decided to persecute and impoverish back in the 90s? Well, some of them aren't all that happy. Maybe you want to address that in some way. Maybe you want to mention that things aren't exactly all fantastic in the land of the free. No? No, you're right. Let's just go with, fuck it, this'll do. Let's just go with, there aren't really any problems we need to deal with. Everything's pretty much fine. I may not know who invented Pokemon Go, but you can Pokemon Go fuck yourself. I want to drink myself into unconsciousness.